I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like. I'm Jared Ball, joined by Brother Diallo and Geechee. Y'all, what's up, fellas? Welcome to another edition here at Black Power Media. Welcome. Good morning to you and everybody here with us live and who will join us later. Peace. What's up, fellas? How you all feeling?
Good morning.
Good morning. We're feeling great. I don't know, the manosphere is sad today, but we're feeling great.
Oh boy. Oh, I forgot about that. Oh man. Rest in peace, Kevin Samuels, apparently, right? Did it get confirmed?
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like it. But oh well.
Oh man. Yeah, what I don't want to be disrespectful. I didn't follow the brother. I didn't have much respect for his politics or his approach to much of anything. But you know, I don't I feel compelled to not speak ill of the recently passed.
Yeah.
But I'll leave it there. I did see a lot of people hating on it though on Twitter.
I never really watched it. I saw like clips here and there. I did see clips of him like berating black mothers, the single mothers who coming into relationships, said she need to put him first. And he said something like if your daughter said that I looked at her in the shower or touched her, then you're supposed to believe me. Something like, I mean, he's been saying all kind of stuff that.
Oh wow, I didn't hear all that.
If you think about Tariq Nasheed, times 15 is probably Kevin Samuels.
Oh wow.
But here's the thing though. There's gonna be a vacuum, and that vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum, and I promise you that slot that he just vacated will be filled before we go off the air. So
you know what? I was thinking the same thing, and I actually know one or two people that probably gonna try to take this moment to.
Yeah. So it's a slot open. Get it in. You know, I know a lot of people putting in their resumes right now because nature abhors a vacuum, and for some reason we love elevating these individuals. I mean, because didn't he take over because what was that guy, Tony Sotomayor, stepped down and decided to move over to right-wing conservatism? So he moved into his slot. So every time when one falls, 4 or 5 arise.
Oh wow, I didn't even realize that. I don't know any of that history or that connection. So that's but I think I think that analysis or that approach is correct. And oh boy. Anyway.
Look, it's maddening because if you listen to what he says, he basically made a career off of saying, wealthy people aren't interested in having relationships, intimate relationships with unwealthy people.
Right.
That's right.
And attractive people tend to not want to be in relationships with unattractive people. And people are like mind blown. Wow, this guy's a genius. This guy's saying it's such the most base analysis and base. I don't understand. I understand. Let me not pretend. He's affirming. A lot of people come online not for enlightenment, but to already affirm their positions and validate their existing positions. So it's good money if you're willing to get out there and regurgitate and reinforce people's indoctrination and their shitty beliefs. So it's a good money if you can.
Oh well.
Oh, it's definitely good money. That the life coaching, self-help, the whole fresh and fit thing, that whole movement.
Punching down.
That's right. Yeah.
Speaking of coaching.
Yeah, what's up?
So obviously let's get into a little bit of this Tamika's book. I mean, I think it's coaching for activists. So she obviously says the state of emergency, how we can win in the country we built.
You know, real quick, before we do that, I just want to let everybody know we do have a couple guests coming on at 9:00. We've actually just had a guest added. So shout out to Josh and Aaliyah, the I Mix What I Like crew who have been helping in the background. So in addition to Dr. Neon B. Hall Campbell, we're also going to be joined by Ambassador Arlie Gill, the chair of the Grenada Reparations Committee. So they're both going to join us at 9:00. To get into some of all of that. And then I just want to again shout out the merchandise that I'm now rocking. I got my new t-shirts. Although I think we might need to adjust the navy blue point part. I don't know if the logo pops enough on it, but anyway. All right. So commercials and all that having taken place.
I mean, I was thinking you about to say we was gonna get Shine from Belize, but okay. Because he's been vocal too, and I think they blocked the people from coming. I don't know, but yeah.
Oh wow, okay, all right, yeah. Anyway, but please, so and I do have a clip whenever you want. I got a Tamika on Roland Martin clip.
We need to play that, but let me give some backdrop. So, Charlemagne, unfortunately, we grew up together, and so our connection is kind of like y'all connection with Wise. It's just kind of And so
why did grow up with Wise?
Well,
he knows Kalonji and all of that. We've never met in person.
Okay, the hip hop connection thing, and so obviously Tamika is connected with him, but anytime they talk to me personally, they like want to impress upon me how much power they have and they could do what they want, interview who they want, and and I told you before, I said, well, interview Jared. He said, well, I'll interview Jared, and blah, blah, blah. But then he said, I'm not going to interview Jared because he called me too arrogant. So it's just like, anyway.
You won't interview me because you're too arrogant.
Yeah. He was kind of like
messing up my whole.
My bad, bro.
Messing up my shine, man. I'm trying to get that bag. I'm trying to get that Charlemagne famous.
Yo, I'm sorry.
Up, man.
He said silly stuff, so when I respond back, he get mad. But anyway. So Tamika wrote this book maybe a year ago, I think. I thought it was 2 years ago. And I saw the CardiB forward. And when I saw that, I was like, there's no way that this is serious. And I never read it. And so a year later, our study group, we were reading The Revolution Will Not Be Funded. And it mentioned some things and it made me think of her. And I said, yo, let me check and see who read this book yet. I posted. Some sisters said, I support everything she do. And I said, well, have you read a book? She said, no, I haven't read it yet. And so Tamika impressed herself upon my post and started saying, oh, well, I earned every penny for my information. And so I was like, yo, well, when I read your book, maybe we'll bring you on the show and talk to you. I know y'all don't want to do that. And I know the remixes don't want to see that shit. But
I disagree. If Tamika would come on here, I would have no problem with that. The same way I had invited Patrice Cullors, like they can. We don't have to agree. And if they want to, we're not mean to anybody. They can come on. We can, chop it up.
So again, there's some things in the book, so I wanted to cover. So first, I think we should kind of look into how I don't want to say use what's her name, Angela Davis. Well, Cardi too, but Cardi wrote a foreword asking Angela Davis what space do she has in the movement. Angela Davis write a foreword back to Cardi, and Angela Davis ends her foreword says Tamika Mallory offers us a radical manifesto that will help to shock future generations of revolutionary freedom fighters. Take heed and move forward. So like Angela Davis, although people think she's more radical than she has been showing, kind of stamp her approval of Tamika before the book, before you even get into the book. So, I mean, I guess I would start. Like, how do y'all feel about Angela Davis making that type of statement? Is there any kind of issues you catch with that?
I think that it's been pretty consistent. Angela Davis has been pretty opportunistic throughout her career, so she kind of rides the hype trains of the era. I remember she was very much on when she was the voice of prison abolition, and then prior to that she was the voice of feminists and women will rise. She's kind of she's seems opportunistic more so than revolutionary. You know, she's and a lot of her takes have been somewhat questionable because, you know, I always say that well, let me not muddy this. I think she's a sellout. So I think she is riding off of a hype train from the 60s, and she was one of the few left standing at that time. And I've always questioned anybody that can go from FBI most wanted to tenured professor. I don't even know white men who could accomplish that feat. So it's always been a side eye for me. I'm just not as trusting as the rest of black folks tend to be.
So, go ahead, Jared.
No, I was just going to say that there's been what I will say is that there's been my experience has been there's been a consistent sort of grassroots radical left critique of Angela Davis, dating back to her trial with Rochelle McGee, the splitting, the communist support of her and not him, you know. But I want to be fair. So my initial bias, my petty bias starts like 20, 30 years ago when I was doing just a little pirate radio show in DC. And I saw Angela Davis go on Fox News, Bill O'Reilly's show. And it was just, obviously it was a horrible exchange. I reached out to her office and said, look, I have just a small pirate radio show in DC that targets, a small black radical audience. But at least if you come on there, you won't be cut off in the way you were and mistreated, the way you were with Bill O'Reilly. The response I got, I'll never forget, which was from her assistant, which said, it was, she will never be available.
Yeah,
like that was the point of the response. Like, because I was like, it's an open-ended invitation. Whenever she wants, we can pre-record. I was like, whatever. It was, she's never going to be available. So I have never forgotten it. I've always been biased by that. I've always been bothered by that because my attitude was, why would you go on all of these commercial mainstream white supremacist anti-radical outlets and get verbally abused and mistreated, but not sit with at the time I was like, I do feel like if you could sit and just talk, we could go for hours, and you can lay out whatever you want. So I've always been biased by that. But I will also say, to be fair, even recently, when she has because I read a little bit of the Mallory book, and I don't like the book, and I'm not politically in agreement with the book, and I'm very uncomfortable with Angela Davis's participation. But to be fair, she at least will continue to speak on behalf of political prisoners when asked. She did speak on behalf recently of Rochelle McGee. She did in the private Zoom chat we were on as part of that presentation or panel about McGee. Because my daughter, to your point, my oldest, caught up in some of the symbolism even I can't protect her from, asked me to ask Dr. Davis to tell her I said hello, and I did, and she wrote back and said, thank you, and tell your daughter blah blah blah. So she was at least nice enough to do that. Right. But I do largely agree. I'm uncomfortable with the use of the sellout phrase, although I can't really critique you for saying, I don't have a criticism. I'm just uncomfortable with it. But it's hard to but I can't be critical of it because this is the space she occupies. Right. The pro-Obama, the pro-Democratic Party, the what feels to me like a disappearance of radical analysis and commentary, even when she's at times speaking on defense of political prisoners. And then, of course, is the very nuanced and brilliant piece from Dr. Joy James a couple of years ago that I think better, and more appropriately situates some of the problems with her public performance. But all that said, when I read this her intro here, the point you're making about the revolutionary stamp of approval for Tamika Mallory, for CardiB, and I get it. You want to be able to say, look, we got to bring everybody in. We got to be willing to talk to everybody.
No.
But then there is a stamp of approval piece that I think goes beyond that. Anyway, go ahead, Diallo or Geechee. Go ahead. I'll stop there.
Well, I have to say I stopped paying attention to her long ago, but this critique has stood. Almost half a century ago, Dr. Clark pointed out that the Black community raised well over $1 million for her, and that money was never accounted for where it went. Wow. Kidi Awadu broke down, her questionable connection to the Jackson brothers, George and Jonathan Jackson, and a lot of unanswered questions related to that. It's always been, and I could say things like, I could use words like controlled opposition, and things like that, but I won't go that far. That's why I'm trying to be nice and say a sellout. She definitely didn't hold it down. And I understand not holding it down. I also understand people's evolving position. Lord knows that my views and positions have evolved over time. So, but the fact that she still tries to inherit that space as a Black radical, and she's no longer a Black radical in the vein that we understand from the militant era of the 60s, but she has that aesthetic. She has the pedigree, and she puts it on sale. She'll show up, like you said, on Fox News when they need a Black radical, or just like Farrakhan, a militant Farrakhan. I don't even call it the Nation of Islam anymore. It's the Nation of Farrakhan, where you can jump from, Scientology to Sun Young Moon and the Moonies. These people who got a name at a certain time during a certain historical epoch, and we leave them in that epoch and refuse to acknowledge their evolution or devolution from that point and see them as who they really are. That's all I encourage people to look, not just look at her aesthetic, not just look at the old images of the posters. What was those posters everybody had in their window? Sister Davis, you're welcome here. You're welcome across the Black, and all that stuff. People change, people evolve. And I think we need to ignore our critique and our conclusions about them need to evolve as they do.
Right. I wonder if so in the forward that she wrote back to CardiB, she pretty much talked about her reach, and it sounds like she, nicely saying that we can tactically use you since you are inquiring. We can tactically use you to reach the message. And I wonder sometimes if because people think she's left, do the left have to tactically use her now? But so I'll say this.
She says she equates Cardi B to Nina Simone.
That messed me up.
And I really struggled with that. I mean, I don't listen to Cardi B at all, so I don't know where she might be, sliding in some progressive or radicalism or whatever. But as it says here, your reluctance to acknowledge yourself as a powerful force for the movement reminds me of the way Nina Simone underestimated the way her art played an essential role in the fight for Black liberation.
She ain't a Nina Simone. She ain't Aretha Franklin, McKeever. She ain't none of those people from what I saw. But I will say this. If people really want her or would like her to come on, I would reach out to her and let her know. But I can tell you, just like Jared knows with Killer Mike or whatever, the private conversation ain't going to be the same as the public conversation. And the chances are they probably not going to come on. But I will offer that. Oh.
Well, I slightly disagree there. To me, the public conversation from Killer Mike is exactly like the private conversation in the sense that it's the same performance. What he said to me off air is exactly, in some cases, line for line, what he says on his public stage to deflect criticism from his left. So it was very performative. The only thing that would be different is that is my part of the conversation in the sense that that's what's absent from his public performance because there's nobody. I'm not there to respond or interject. But my point is, like I said, I don't have to agree, and I think to a certain extent, up to a certain point, I'm open to talk with whoever. But it would be very different from the conversation she had with with Roland Martin and wherever else that I've seen her pop up. So I'm not, and then the way you two, the back and forth on Instagram. I don't know if she's going to want. But Tamika would always be. I don't have a problem with that. Like anyway, I don't have a problem with that.
So also, I want to say this real quick. So one of the things that, again, like when her or Charlemagne advocates that, I'm not controlled by states or corporations. One of the sisters even alluded to Tamika can't be bought in her book. But when you look at Black Privilege Publishing, it's an imprint of what is it? Aria Books or something like Aria Books. And so imprints don't mean the person owned the company. It means they're trying to, which they said, they're trying to use Charlemagne to reach Charlemagne's audience. And so after them, they're owned by Simon and Schuster.
Yeah, it's a Simon and Schuster. Yeah.
And then they're owned by Penguin House and Paramount, CBS, Viacom, who also owns Comedy Central, where he had his other show on. And then they're owned by National Amusements, who's owned by the Redstone family. So this concept of I'm not controlled by the state or corporations is kind of like it's only believable for somebody who like the other sister on my post.
Well,
go ahead.
To those individuals' credit, I mean, if you go all the way back to dating myself to the Noam Chomsky's piece, Manufacturing Consent, where he wrote about journalists in the past would always say in public, people would say, no one tells me what to say. And it's true. And they get to say that in all honesty. I mean, if you hook them up to a lie detector test, it wouldn't trigger on that point because they hand select the people they don't have to tell what to say. They hand select the people who agree with them or who align with them. So, when people say I'm not controlled by corporation, who cares if your values and what you advocate is consistent with what the corporations want? I'm not controlled by corporations, but I don't want what the corporate wants. I don't support the status quo. But if I'm Black and I support the status quo and I get put on a platform and I get cut a check, then they don't have to tell me what to say if I'm already saying things that are consistent about securing the bag, about neo-integrationism and aggressive or militant integrationists like Killer Mike, militant integrationism. So it's true. They're not controlled. They're aligned. They resonate with. They own the same frequency of their masters of corporations. I don't know what the appropriate lingo is, but I can accept it.
I understand the control part, but I think when you advocate that you're a free thinker and you like have your own thoughts, but then you literally regurgitate stuff that somebody.
But if you have so internalized the value system that we've all been aggressively indoctrinated into, people do believe they're thinking their own thoughts or articulating their own positions while they're regurgitating their indoctrination. A lot of people cannot distinguish between themselves and their oppressors. A lot of people can't distinguish between their own thoughts and the indoctrination that they had to endure. So a lot of times when you're talking to, also in the miseducation of the Negro, if there is no place for the Negro, he will make a place for himself. How many times you've been in the room and the white voice, the white ideas, the white authority was there, and it wasn't a white person within 100 miles of that room? It's all Black people in the room, but white people are well represented, and there's not someone in their earpiece telling them to articulate white people's interest. They are the living embodiment. I mean, white folks have worked hard to you look at Menticide, also articulates this. So they're telling the truth when they're saying this is what I think, this is what I believe, and nobody told me to say this. Yeah, they independently think those shitty thoughts and take those shitty positions without being told.
To your point about how hard they work, again, my favorite book, one of them, The Cultural Cold War, where Stoner Saunders talks about that, and one of those CIA undercover editor operators makes the statement that I'll butcher, here, but more or less says it's not about paying someone and telling them exactly what to say. It's about hiring people and placing them as editors, pundits, spokespeople who you already know are ideologically predisposed to say what you want. That's the whole, that's how neocolonialism works. It's so it does appear as free will, et cetera, and so forth. But and that's why, I mean, so if I can though, can I play this clip real quick where she was on Roland Martin, just real quick? It's not long. We don't have to play much of it, but I think because what I like about the clip is that I think it shows some of the difficulty that those without, I think, an appropriate politically educated frame can get lost, it makes it difficult to assess and then pinpoint where to critique somebody or to deliver a criticism, because she does what a former colleague of mine and I used to argue about and have argued about in terms of Tyler Perry, and she uses the Mantan Manifesto to self-defend. But let me just play this little clip.
Well, I mean, obviously the work that you're involved in is intense as well. Before you delve into it, I got to ask you this here. And
this is from May of last year, by the way.
All activists have to deal with, and it's one of the hardest things when you're not getting sleep, when your diet is all over the place, when you're battling illness, when people are pulling you left and right, getting phone calls from people all around the country to come here and come here. And then you have folks who are constantly attacking and sniping and questioning your integrity, your credibility, and your character. How do you deal with that? Because it's a lot. I mean, there are moments and I've talked to other folks, folks get down and they sit there going like, damn, I'm sitting there putting all this work in and having to deal with BS for people who look like me.
Roland, I have developed thick skin because thankfully I've been around great leaders my entire life, and I watched them be attacked and to be castigated and to have their character defamed in the same ways. And I think that the only thing we can do, in fact, I saw a tweet from Mark Lamont Hill the other day that basically said, keep doing the work. History will vindicate you. And for me, that's what I'm leaning on. And I think the other piece, because I call you and I call others and say, different things that I'm feeling. And we talk through what is the right way to approach addressing some of it. And most of it we are not addressing at all, because those individuals, for the most part, that spend so much time focusing on trying to critique and tear me down are people that I never see outside. I don't see them. I didn't see them in Baytown, Texas, for Pamela Turner. I never saw them in Louisville, Kentucky for Breonna Taylor. I've not seen them in New York for Eric Garner, Sean Bell, or many of the fights that I've been involved in. And I travel across the country supporting many families who asked me to be there. I've not seen them supporting Trayvon Martin, who I was just with his mother in Florida just this past weekend, where she held a conference for the Circle of Mothers. Sandra Bland's mother was there. So many mothers. The names go on. It's too many names. Cleola was there for her daughter, Hadaya Pendleton, who's a 16-year-old who was killed on in a park in Chicago, and President Obama honored her. Cheyenne Norman, this is a woman who I helped her to bury her 4-year-old child. I've been with these families for 25 years of my life, and in every single situation, I don't even think I've ever met any of these people, and so I have to keep focused. But I think the thing that I've been taught by so many of the great leaders who have been through these things before me is to focus on those people who are with you, and not to say that I don't listen to critique, because there have been times when you've called me to say, hey, I don't think the way in which you all are approaching certain things is the right way to go. Let's look at the strategy.
That's my favorite
but the
part.
way that it's done is in love. The way that it's done is not an attempt to gossip about me, to tear me down, or to try to vilify me. It's done in a way that lets me feel safe, and I think we all should protect our energy and feel safe, So I focus my
That's
attention
slick.
on people who want to critique from a position that allows me to grow, rather than people who are looking for attention and likes on their social media and are using the defamation of another Black person, and particularly a woman, in order to get that.
So if I was going to add to what we defined as the Mantan Manifesto, taken from Spike Lee's Bamboozled film, which was basically, I forgot the whole thing, but it's hire Black people, wear dashikis, invite the sort of the acceptable Black criticism from the Sharpton types, who's literally pictured in that film, playing himself. If I was going to add to that, I would add what she said there. Those of us who are actually there, as opposed to those who aren't, protecting us and making us feel safe, and only criticizing us from a place of love, and and just co-opting that kind of language of, again, protecting Black women, of appropriate criticism. So then anybody that does criticize you is inappropriate, anti-woman, anti-Black woman, anti their safety. And it's the same thing, by the way, that Mark Lamont Hill did in his interview with Patrisse Cullors. It's the same last year too, I think. It's that same kind of approach. The leftward criticism, particularly from within the Black community, is dismissed as anti-woman, again, all this other kind of thing. So anyway, it's pretty slick. Plus she's everywhere. They're everywhere.
I call that atrocity hopping, and she gonna tell, working class and poor Black people, you're not taking charter jets to all these places, to chase these cameras, and this atrocity hopping, thing that happens has created literally an elite oppressed. She was named the Trayvon Martin's family, and who, you're a victim of a racist tragedy, and then you're on stage with Jay-Z and Beyonce. You're on some special committee set up by Hillary Clinton, mothers of the movement. So everything gets co-opted by this system, and now these oppressed elite or elite oppressed are up there, are essentially celebrities themselves. And she's just name dropping people and name dropping city. If you could put that to a beat, I go from city to city. I rub elbows, and then got the nerve to talk about I'm for the women and people. And we already know the victims and the true oppressed masses, what they've already said about how, it's not trickling down, trickle down activism and trickle down, grants and resources and support. It's not trickling down. So trickle down economics ain't working. And now trickle down activism, we're going to move to that instead of bottom up movements or grassroots movements. It's crazy. And the bottom line, one thing about atrocity hopping, every town and city has on the ground people that work. When there is no news coverage, when there are no helicopters hovering, here in Chicago right now, we got people on the ground that work day to day. And these atrocity hoppers come here and overshadow, don't meet with the people, don't talk to the people. They come here and they go straight to the luxury suite. They go straight to the whatever AME church, big ass leeching parasitic AME church with the big parasitic AME or some other. Depending on what region you're in.
Sometimes they get in fights with the actual organizers.
Exactly. So, shame on
I
her.
do want to invite, I got to find the links and put them in the description here, but please, everybody, if you can, look at our interviews with the BLM 10. We've done a couple of interviews with around the sisters doing work that Tamika has apparently attempted to attach herself and take credit for. So we've invited, we've heard from the people who have a specific criticism that is not really addressed in that kind of response. It's they with a lot of the they and the them and no specific reference to where the critiques that she's describing are coming from. it was a very straw defense, you know. But anyway,
But
So
we've been here before. Remember NAACP? You had the National Celebrity NAACP Negroes, you know, as the Big Six, as Malcolm X called it, the handkerchief head Negroes, and you had some real organizers on the ground facing real threats on a daily basis that we didn't know the names of back then, and many of their names we don't know now. While you had these big shiny Negroes sitting across the table from everything from international diplomats to senators and even the president. We've been here before.
But that's the thing though. So one of those Negroes that you're talking about is the person who groomed her, Al Sharpton, right? And so this is somebody she's bragging about in the book. Al Sharpton is, you know, she cracked her organizing teeth with Al Sharpton. She also threw John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben up in there. That's what she learned from real historians.
Hold on, she said she mentions Dr. Clark in there.
Yes,
I saw that. Yeah,
she said she learned from real historians. She said, like, so I believe that in the book she has the eye disease. She's I and I. But I want to get into a couple words because it's so much shit in there. There's so much shit in there, man, that I'm telling you, I call it political satire. But there's this thing that she said, we can't go forward and unite with our oppressors until our oppressors repent and repair what centuries of institution, imprisonment, murder, and hatred have wrought. Let's see how the next 4 years under this administration tackles that. Until they do, this remains a state of emergency. So what are we going to do about it? So she literally wants to unite with the oppressors, right? So again, if you were calling this radical and revolutionary, and she's telling you like, I want to actually unite with my victimizers.
Wait, you didn't set that up right though. What she does is worse.
Yeah.
Look at how she brings Dr. Clark into the discussion here. You have to understand that the National Action Network, all right, that's Al Sharpton, was an organization that followed a very traditional model. The leaders within and around NAN were not just any old neighborhood Joes holding signs. They were historians, and many of them were Dr. King's school of activism. They were raised in the civil rights movement. The organization was filled with pivotal figures. I learned from legends how to activate and make a social impact. If you were in Harlem in the late 1990s and early 2000s, you would meet some of the most influential Black thought leaders. Dr. John Henrik Clark, Dr. Yosef Ben Jokinen, Sharshi McIntyre, Camille Yarborough. That's an unfair. Even if you want to agree with Tamika in her general approach politically, that is a gross misrepresentation. They are not the school of Dr. King's civil rights. Al Sharpton is exactly the wing of that Dr. King was trying to eradicate in his own lifetime.
Right.
Dr. Clark called Sharpton, at best said Sharpton was of value because he was the ambulance chasing alarm raiser.
Big mouth, yeah.
Not the analysis giver, not the work doer.
And he called him a Baptist hustler too. So he acknowledged how much he was a Baptist hustler. So yeah. And not to mention Nan has a lot of issues with, you know, mistreating women and doing some other stuff. So it's kind of weird to me that this is who she is.
And you know, I guess I'll be the bad guy. Say hello to the bad guy. You know, and you talk about National Action Network. I moved to New York City in 1992. And one of the first places I went, because, you know, growing up in the Midwest in Missouri, I thought that New York was a haven for revolution. Like the first time I saw a Black person eat pork in New York, my mind was blown because I thought New York was this haven for Black consciousness and revolutionary thought. And I had a friend and one of my college buddies sit across from me and eat a piece of pepperoni. I'm like, whoa, that has pork in it. And he's like, yeah. And so anyway, you know, I went to the National Action Network headquarters, and it was literally like a grimy storefront church, you know, just upstairs from a bodega. At the same time, Al Sharpton had one of his mistresses living in Trump Tower, you know, in a luxury penthouse in Trump Tower. Al Sharpton had his mistress in there when and you know, it was in the tabloids at the time. you know, it was kind of inescapable. It was in the tabloids at the time. So, you know, let's keep it a buck. She was trained by Al Sharpton, and he was a thorough mentor for her, and she is following in his vein. And only one thing I could say about this whole thing is, with this leader for life syndrome that we have plaguing us across the Pan-African community and the Black community in general, at least he's one of the few leaders for life that is trying to train up his replacement, as opposed to leaving a vacuum like Kevin Samuels did. So there won't be a scramble. At least shout out to him for handpicking some replacements.
Shout out to Roy Ennis for pushing him off the stage back in the day. That was pretty funny.
Oh, you talking about the dude who named his son Nigger?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, he named his son Nigger Ennis. But he changed the spelling a little bit. I think he took out one of the G's.
Them two was beefing back in the day. So no. Hey, also
back then I was rooting for Sharpton in that conflict.
Hey,
I was hoping Sharpton would bounce, because Sharpton bounced up from that chair and was about to get busy, and security was on him. So that was a sneak attack.
Well, they did promise to have a boxing match, but I don't know if that ever took off. But
yeah.
So another thing that Tamika,
and Sharpton's vegan now, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
I don't
if
know.
he is, I take back everything I said about him. Go Sharpton.
Hey, so there's an approach to throw in this anti-intellectual stance, right? She says, I'm not a poli-sci student who set out with big dreams to change the world. I'm from the bottom. Front lines was my classroom, and experience was
put it to a beat. Put it to a beat. She be spitting bars.
Yeah, but she rocked with my son. So my son got bars. His rap career didn't work out, so he turned to activism. So hey, she said, I know firsthand what it looks like when the system fails a community of people, because 1980s Harlem was supposed to trap me. I was set up to be a statistic, but I persevered. I used my street savvy mixed with education. Watch this. I received from private schools, applying the combination as a skills to navigate social issues and local politics.
Wait, what private school? How did that happen?
Listen, her mom and them had a little bit of cake. Her mom and dad had cake. They was rocking. They actually, I don't want to know. She said they started or was one of the first members of NAD. So I think that her mom, had some money, just like Sharpton.
I mean, I grew up with very little and got to 2 Quaker private schools on some sort of scholarship / loan situation. So it is possible. I was curious about,
she didn't go into detail of the private school.
The jump from the bottom to the private school. Yeah, anyway.
I graduated from a private school as well.
Oh, you from the bottom?
Yeah, I'm from the way bottom. I'm still on the bottom, actually. I can't use that from, but yeah, I did attend a private.
Still at
Bishop Hogan Rams.
I got this. I got one more. I got another one. So the 1994 crime bill reinforced racist legislation and laid out an aggressive approach to policing that has kept Black community in shambles. Imagine if imagine if that money and commitment had been invested in the rehabilitation of marginalized communities. If prisons focus on decriminalizing their incarcerated, building up the resume and skill sets of offenders instead of dehumanizing them. So she acknowledges that the crime bill jacked us up. But hey, since you put them in jail, you might as well pad their resume up, and that'll be a solid.
Yeah. Well, you don't know Nan. I just want her to remix You Don't Know Nan, with CardiB, feature CardiB and Mark Lamont Hill. You don't know Nan.
You don't know Nan.
You don't know Nan activists that can do it like me.
No, but she does share important experience though that you all are hating on. When she says, I remember my dear friend Michael Blake inviting me to attend a movie screening at the White House hosted by the beautiful First Lady Michelle Obama. I was among less than 20 people who were granted access to screen the movie The Help. Moments under their care at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue were some of the most memorable times of my career. that is the care of Barack and Michelle Obama.
Help.
And watching The Help. So I was waiting to see the criticism of that film, and she didn't. There was none, by the way. But the same thing here. There's more of that same kind of thing. Unified, we are powerful enough to push the priority of our issues to Vice President Harris. I name her because she, more than President Biden, is responsible for my vote. I have no so Tamika's basically admitting she was captured by the exact, by Biden's plan, by his team's plan, worked with Tamika. I have no desire to try to discern whether racist ideologies of the past may still exist within our new president. No interest in that. No desire to try to discern. He was a proxy. He was proxy to Vice President Kamala Harris as a Black woman whose values aligned most closely with my own. I'm sure many Americans can see a portion of their reflection when looking at her life. She represents so many different communities and is representative of everything American, because before we were known to the country as the country that elected Donald Trump, we were known as the melting pot of different communities. Now I'm even more mad having read her shout out to Dr. Clark. I had missed that part, but I'm seeing this and I'm like, this is just remarkable.
Yeah. She also might she hope and pray that Kamala has an overwhelming revolutionary spirit. She says during the election season, we talked a lot about Kamala Harris' time as a prosecutor, but I'm conscious of the era she was in, right? So that was just that area, and you probably would have done it too. Vice President Harris was operating within a system that criminalized Black people for sport. So you should participate. And her job was to persecute criminals. She was a minority woman in a white male-dominated field that is built on oppression. I wish she had been revolutionary, but now we are in a new time. All I can do is pray she's ready to live up to the challenge set before her. I can only hope she will be overwhelmed with a revolutionary spirit.
Yeah, I can only hope that
hope
she will
dope.
be. Hope is dope.
Oh, that's that Barack Obama and Jesse Jackson. Keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
Anyway, so I mean, look, I what else I read in what little else I've read in the book is basically it's pro-Democratic Party. It's why we have to keep voting for these people. It will be worse if we don't. And then there's some sprinkling in of things that we would want to see, like where she talks about, we should cancel student debt and stuff like that. And that's all well and good. But they just read to me like, sort of almost like straw praise or straw radicalism. When there's no will towards that in the people that you're voting for. And if you're going to say that Kamala Harris represents so much of what you blah, 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 she doesn't want any of these things, and neither does her party. So
she did mention the universal basic income that King suggested, and obviously, like you said, the debt jubilee, but that was kind of like a sprinkle in there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's great, and that's sort of the point, and thank you for adding that, because that's sort of the point that I'm getting at, that when you do that, it convinces people more to your left that there's hope with your platform, or people that should be more to your left that there's hope with your platform. And that's why, going back to where we started, whether she's paid and told to say this or simply positioned because they know she will say this is exactly what is necessary. Right. And did she defend? I saw in the chat earlier. Did she at some point, was she an advocate for Bernie Sanders at one point? Did she go that far?
I don't remember seeing any. I don't remember seeing any Bernie support.
Okay, because that would just be the sort of the exaggeration. Because Killer Mike at one point had, and that was at some point, it would have been sort of the exaggerated version of what I'm saying, like that, because he himself, I think, was only placed to, or given that room to a certain extent to capture people that would be more to the left of him or the Democratic Party, to as Bruce Dixon used to say, sheepdog them back into the Democratic Party. So it would still be consistent as far as I'm concerned. Okay,
but I never bought the sheepdog criticism of
Okay.
Bernie and his campaign.
All right.
And it's simply because, like myself and other Bernie supporters, they didn't go into the Democrats. Many of the Bernie supporters went and voted for libertarian candidates. Like myself, voted for Green candidates after he was had the primary snatched away from him. So it obviously didn't work. Look at Hillary Clinton; she didn't get a wellspring of support from Bernie supporters, and she lost. She won actually, but I'm not going to get in that. But she didn't take the White House. And then in his second attempt against Biden, the same thing happened. So I don't buy it. And he has too long of a track record of his political ideology and his political advocacy. Not that I think he's by no means revolutionary or a true socialist, but it just didn't seem. It seemed like
but the way I understood. Sorry, my bad. Go ahead. My bad.
No. I mean, if it really was a con, it's a con that dates back 50 more years. Did they go all the way back to when he was an undergrad to set him up as who he was, then to bring him to the Democratic Party in the year 2000? It doesn't make sense.
No, but the way I understood, and maybe I don't remember the specifics, but the way I've always understood the sheepdog argument isn't in preventing where necessarily voters would go once that specific candidacy, in this case Bernie, dropped out. It's in positioning people so that all of the momentum that might be used to break from the Democratic Party and form something more to its left would be taken up in support of that candidate until the last minute. So then, if you go to the Greens, if I go to the Greens, if someone else goes to the Libertarians, by then it's too late. Those parties aren't in position to threaten the Democratic Party. And then the momentum that I would have always hoped to see that would extend from those non-traditional votes to building some sort of alternative is captured and brought back into the Democratic umbrella for the next cycle. So that's why we still don't see. So even with you and I and others voting the way we did or didn't, or not voting at all, there's still no groundswell to move into some other formation. And then all of those people are brought back into the next Democratic cycle for the next Bernie type hopeful. And certainly in terms of the dominant messaging. So even if I or you, I'm not sure where you are with this, persist in saying we need to break left electorally, the response is we still can't. We got to hope there's another Bernie type. We got to stop the fascists, and all that other stuff. And that's where the sheep herding really kicks in. That's how I've understood it. Yeah.
But that doesn't hold true, because in most election cycles there is no Bernie. So they could say, well, if there wasn't a Bernie, then all these people would be given momentum to a third party option. That's not really true, because what about in the most of the cycles when it is they're only front runners and the only people on the debate stage are Democrats and Republicans. Those people aren't there. So why are you? So really, what you have,
because it just makes it easier then,
right? But why do you? But there it wasn't as though there was some groundswell of third party interest and enthusiasm, and then Bernie emerged and obliterated that. It's kind of like when they said Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, and people get on, oh, it's a distraction. And I asked them, a distraction from what? Was everybody on the verge of doing something or being made aware of something?
But I think there's a threat that there is, though. It wasn't that people were standing on the precipice of a third party, but there was a lot. It's a way of it's the updated way of returning all disaffected Democrats back to the Democratic Party. So if there's no Bernie, then it's just easier, because then you just have to, there is no left or pushing left alternative. When there is a Bernie and there is a groundswell in the broader zeitgeist for something left of the Democratic Party, you can just push him, you could elevate him slightly, and he'll suck all that up more easily. And then you end up back in the same place.
He wasn't elevated slightly. If you look prior to Bernie's emergence into the national consciousness and on the national political stage, he was doing brunch with Bernie. He was talking directly to his constituents. He was talking directly to people when he was a obscure politician that had nowhere the profile that he had back then. So it's not as though he was put there or he just emerged there. I think he was reaching the end of his career and he saw, he pretty much had a go big or go home moment, and he was there initially. I felt that he was a protest candidate trying to push some issues into the Democratic platform. But when he saw that it was more viable, he tried to push harder and he actually became a threat. And the people you say they used him as a sheepdog consciously subvert him. It just doesn't hold up to the sheepdog narrative or the sheepdog analogy. It just doesn't hold up.
So how do you think the media apparatus, what part did the media apparatus play in his being, I don't want to say made more public, but do you think at any way they kind of elevated him or highlighted him or used him?
They initially attempted to ignore him. Remember, they initially attempted to ignore him. Then they started to mock him. But it was just because of, like, they even the DNC even said Bernie is a special case with the funding that he got. Now, I don't have any faith in US. It's just, all I have to say is they did the same thing they do to most upstarts. First, they try to ignore him, then they try to mock it and belittle him, then they embrace and co-opt. It's the same hustle. But I just think the sheepdog analogy just doesn't hold up to examination in how it plays. But
But it did, because most of the people that were left of the Democratic Party came back and voted for. They didn't go where you and I went. They stayed right there in their party. They didn't go and build something left of that.
Right,
so
but
that was, yeah.
But they were going to do that regardless of whether Bernie ran or not. I
don't disagree with that. That's why I said it was the only difference was when Bernie is there, it's a little harder for the party, for the Democrats to they have to work a little harder to make use of that, given that it is what Bernie represents is so attractive to most voters. So they just have to again work a little harder, let it breathe, and then when necessary, they just shut it. They just pull the plug. They literally pull the funding, pull him into the office and say, sit down and sign up for Biden. And that's what he did. And most of his people did go there.
Well, again, this is politics. And like you said, if there was no groundswell, the whole bringing people into the Democratic Party, only thing he did was mobilize he did mobilize some people outside of the Democratic Party, but most of his support were people within the Democratic.
No, that's
Party.
what I mean. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is he's not bringing people in. He's sheepdogging, meaning that he's keeping the ones that might stray off the farm coming back.
But they don't stray. Most Democrats don't stray. They just he did bring up some enthusiasm and a little bit of hopium, but those people were there whether he was going to run or not. It's the same thing about the right wing when Ross Perot went, and the libertarian wing of the Republican Party. Everybody, Ross Perot, and he went from being independent and jumping around and all that. It was the same thing with Ross Perot. Those racist Republicans were there before, they were there after, and they were there during, but they're going to be there whether Ross Perot was there or not.
I think I would like to see some, if there's any kind of like that out there that obviously will show that people after he left still voted, people from the left or who identify as left voted for any one of those people afterwards. I don't know if there's any data.
Well, I'm one of the people from the left. Right. After Bernie was out of the primary, I no longer voted for a Democrat. I was done voting after that. I voted for Bernie in the primary, and that's it. I didn't vote for Bernie. I didn't vote for Biden after Bernie or Hillary after Bernie. Right. So those what the left people did. But the Democrats who were going to vote Democrat whether Bernie ran or not just stayed the course. They didn't really need to be herded on the path that they were already on. That's all I'm saying. He did. I don't see him causing people to change. Now, he did change the funding. He went where he forced a lot of politicians to start trying to push for those small $5 donations, and looking for, as opposed to pursuing big donors, and everybody had to talk about, well, most of my 80% of my donations came from, were $2,500 or less. So he did change the dialogue, but I don't think he influenced how people voted as much as he changed some of the issues that people were able to discuss at that level of U.S. political discourse.
Right on. Well, anyway, I don't. The only other thing I wanted to add is that I don't think he and I think he also had a negative impact on discussions of what is and is not socialism. So like, I don't agree with even some of the socialists who say he had a net positive in making room for more discussion of socialism. I don't think he did that. I think he was a false representation of that as well. But I don't know. I would like to see, I don't have the data in front of me, but I mean, the fact, I mean, I know Hillary didn't beat Trump, but I don't think that was because of, I don't think that's because Bernie supporters left in large enough numbers, as much as it was just people in general were not going to support her regardless.
Right.
So
they said
Go
the
ahead.
same thing about Ralph Nader when Al Gore lost to George Bush.
Right. And he didn't have anything to do with that.
Right. So, and I don't think Nader was a sheepdog. Nader been,
but that was a different campaign. Nader was running not as a Democrat. He was running as an that's my point. The Democrats allowed for, given Bernie's, I agree with you, but given his age and whatever, his late interest in having the last walk under the sun, since we're making Clark references, inappropriate Clark references all morning. They were like, let's take advantage of this and use him as best we can. But look, I tell you, we do have one of our guests here. So
the memos,
the
internal memos that got leaked from the DNC is that they didn't see him as a positive. They didn't take advantage of him. They were sent into a panic by him. The Democratic DNC broke its own internal rules and its own protocols in order to subvert Bernie. You can't say that they used him at the same time they were trying to eject him and thwart him.
I can.
Which is it? Which is it? Were they using him or trying to thwart him?
Both. They want to use. That's my point. They have no intention of actually allowing his platform to take hold of the party, but they want to use that platform that is so attractive to so many to bring people in up to the point where they have no other alternative.
So
it absolutely works that way.
That's kind of
even. Go ahead.
That's kind of like when people like from the right say, the left is a bunch of weaklings. They need safe spaces. They're so weak. And then at the same time, the left is so powerful and they control everything.
I didn't say they controlled everything. I'm not saying
no,
that
I'm not. I'm just saying the analogy, saying that the target of your critique occupies two contradictory positions at the same time. He's both a tool of the DNC. He's also a blight and a threat to the DNC. So
I'm not even saying he's a tool, and I'm saying they were scrambling to try to make best use of what was in place. He was a fact. So they said, so the point was, we can't let his politics actually win. We're not going to actually nominate him and let him be our nominee. But I could absolutely see, and whether they intended it or not, and again, to my point and my understanding of Bruce's argument, it wasn't that they put this in motion like a machine. It's that even if their intent was to suppress Bernie, the fact of his presence worked to sheepdog many potentially left-breaking people back into the party. Go ahead.
But that's not what he said. He didn't say his presence was, or that they used. He said that Bernie was the sheepdog. So you got a sheepdog that's literally eating the sheep. You got a sheepdog that's or biting the hand of the master.
The sheepdog again is just to keep the sheep on the farm. to not let them roam off.
But you got an electrified fence for that. You know, you got an electrified fence for that.
But I'm just telling you what the analogy was.
And right, I understand the analogy. I've heard it, and you know, I've been targeted with that criticism when I said that, you know, I vote for Bernie. I'm voting for Bernie in the primary. You know, I even had a Bernie bumper sticker on my car.
I even said if he had gotten the nomination, I would have probably voted for him, and been the first time I voted for Democrats since Bill Clinton.
So see, I didn't even support Bill Clinton, you know, and
well, that was my first vote. I'm sorry, you were more advanced. That was my first 18-year-old. I was in the military, casting one of them absentee whatever. And I was like, but just once.
I carry a shame too.
It was saxophone in the weed.
I only voted for one Democrat in a presidential election once, and that was Obama's first term. So I carry that shame.
See, I didn't even do that. Yeah.
I just came out the closet just this moment because I don't think I've ever said that publicly.
Oh, damn. Wow.
So we both got our
definitely
shame.
About to get the rainbow memes now. Now you really messed up now.
So all I'm saying is, man, I understand the machinations that happened with the Bernie candidacy. I just don't think the sheepdog is inappropriate. It doesn't stand up. It's not a good analogy for what happened there. There are, you know, I'll try to come. It just isn't. You know, it's just inaccurate. It's not even that I want to defend Bernie because I'm utterly disgusted with Bernie. You know, and how he moved and how he played. But you know, I'll leave it at that. But it just doesn't stand up. It wasn't a sheepdog type situation. You know.
All right, so we'll table our disagreement on that for now, right. and because one of our two guests at least is standing by, so let's go ahead and honor that and honor her, and come back, take a quick break, and come back and get into some light work, just light work, international diaspora reparations, something easy. We can tackle that real quick. Be right back.
I mix what I like, what I like.